The fork slammed down against the table like a gavel. My father's eyes narrowed, voice raised just enough to cut through the clinking of dishes and polite laughter echoing around the family dining room. A computer repair shop? That's what you're throwing away your future for. I froze with my glass halfway to my lips. Across from me, my uncle let out a chuckle and my cousin didn't even try to hide his smirk. My mother shook her head as if she just heard I was going to rob a bank. Ryan, be serious. My sister sighed, brushing invisible lint off her blouse. You have a chance to work for a real company. A real future. Not some geeky garage project. I looked around. There it was again, that familiar stare from every single person I'd grown up with. Disappointment cloaked as concern. Pity masked as practicality. They had all already decided I was the joke of the table. A joke with no punchline. I was supposed to be joining the family company, following the blueprint that had been laid out since I could walk, in turn under my uncle, climb through the ranks, smile for Christmas cards and company polos. Instead, I said I wanted to fix computers. Build my own thing. My dad leaned forward, face tight. You think you're smarter than all of us? That you're going to outcode 20 years of enterprise software with some used parts and a desk in a strip mall? I wanted to say a lot in that moment. I wanted to tell them that I didn't need their permission. That I had plans they couldn't even imagine. But all I managed was a quiet, I just want to try. My dad's laugh was dry. This is why no one takes you seriously. And that was it. That sentence carved something permanent inside me. Something that would grow with every sleepless night, and every skipped meal I poured into my business. At that moment, I wasn't just a disappointment, I was disposable. Replaceable. And worse, amusing. Hey everyone, welcome back to HD Reddit Stories. I have a question for you. Have you ever been laughed at by the people who were supposed to support you the most? The people who raised you? Told you they believed in you, until you actually did something they didn't approve of. Because that night, when they laughed at my business idea, I realized they didn't just doubt me, they were counting on me to fail. They weren't afraid I'd embarrass myself. They were afraid I might succeed without them. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy stories like this, where success isn't handed out at family dinners, but taken one brutal inch at a time. They didn't just laugh. They hoped I'd crawl back. But I wasn't building a shop. I was building leverage. After that dinner, I didn't go home. I sat in my car for 2 hours in the parking lot of a closed cafe, trying to decide if I was brave or just stupid. Their laughter echoed in my ears like a rerun I couldn't turn off. I kept staring at the printed lease on the passenger seat, the one for the tiny, half-gutted storefront on Maple and 3rd. I'd already signed it, already wired the deposit. But hearing them laugh made me second-guess everything. Still, the next morning, I showed up with a broom, a drill, and exactly one customer on my books, my friend Nathan, who needed a broken laptop screen replaced. I told him I'd do it for free if he gave me a 5-star review and took a picture outside the store for my non-existent Instagram. He agreed. That was my marketing strategy. I called the place BiteFix. A little nerdy, a little punchy. I printed the logo myself on sticky vinyl and slapped it on the dusty glass door. The first week, I made $87. The second week, I made $40. The third week, I made nothing, and got my first bad review from a guy who tried to pay me in expired gift cards and got mad when I said no. I spent nights sleeping in the back room on an inflatable mattress because my apartment lease had ended and I couldn't afford both rent and the shop. Meanwhile, my cousin Jake was posting selfies in a new company BMW. His caption: "Grinding never stops." I wanted to punch the screen. He was working in the same company I had walked away from, a business built by my grandfather, now run by my uncle with all the usual layers of nepotism. I had interned there once. I still remembered cleaning the server closet while Jake was shadowing the sales director on a golf course. No one from the family called me. Not even on my birthday. My mom texted once, "Are you eating well?" but didn't reply when I said no. I knew they weren't just ignoring me, they were waiting. waiting for me to admit I was wrong. To come crawling back with a resume in my hand and humility in my voice. But I didn't crawl. I coded. I spent sleepless nights building my own invoicing system so I could offer clients faster service. I designed a bare-bones inventory system to keep track of parts. I taught myself how to install POS systems for local cafes, and convinced one of them to let me test it for free if I fixed their Wi-Fi. I did. Their internet went from medieval to blazing fast in 24 hours. They told other cafes. Word of mouth started to spread. 3 months in, I was making just enough to break even. I hired my first part-timer, Maya, a brilliant CS undergrad who could disassemble a Mac faster than I could blink. We worked shoulder to shoulder, sometimes eating cold noodles while running system diagnostics. She believed in the mission because she was just like me, underestimated. But behind the progress, the loneliness kept growing. I missed the illusion of family. I missed Thanksgiving, even if they spent most of it bragging about each other's promotions and beach condos. One night, I drove past my parents' house and saw all the cars parked outside. I sat there, headlights off, engine humming. No one knew I was outside. No one would have cared. I was invisible now. By choice, and by their design. And then came the worst week. A pipe burst in the ceiling above the shop during a winter freeze. The water ruined 2 customer desktops and half my inventory. I didn't have insurance. I refunded the clients using every penny I had left and took a personal loan with 17% interest just to cover costs. Maya's hours were cut. I stopped paying myself. I stopped sleeping. I was close to giving up. I had a spreadsheet labeled Exit Options on my desktop. It had job listings, old contact emails, Plan BS and CS. But something stopped me from hitting send on those emails. Pride, maybe? Or stubbornness? Or that sentence my father said, "This is why no one takes you seriously." That line haunted me. Drove me. Became my fuel. Then, the email came. A regional convenience store chain, Millimart, needed a custom POS system that could sync sales, inventory, and security footage. They'd been burned by big providers with bloated fees and outdated support. Someone from that cafe I'd helped had recommended me. I wasn't ready, but I said yes. I pulled 4 straight all-nighters to write the base framework. Maya pulled in her roommate and her boyfriend, and suddenly we were a 5-person dev team duct-taping miracles together with coffee and raw willpower. After 2 months of development, configuration, and testing, we launched the system in 14 stores across the county. It worked. And more than that, it worked better than the client expected. Word got around fast. In the next 6 months, we scaled to 40 more locations. I got my first real paycheck in over a year. I repainted the shop. I moved out of the back room. I got actual sleep. For the first time, I felt like maybe, this wasn't a disaster. Then came the irony. Millimart's CFO called me into a meeting and asked if I'd be interested in a side project. One of their old software providers had flaked on an enterprise licensing renewal, and they needed to migrate quickly. I said sure, until I saw the name of the provider. It was my family's company. The same one I'd walked out of. The same one that once laughed at my ambition. The one where my cousin posted motivational quotes, while treating real engineers like errand boys. My heart did a weird lurch. I didn't react in the meeting. I played it cool. Professional. But after, I went to my car and sat there in silence. Then I laughed, because it was almost too perfect. I did the migration. Quietly. Efficiently. I didn't gloat. I didn't email anyone in my family. I just did the job. But inside me, something changed that day. I realized they weren't untouchable. They were vulnerable, more than they knew. Word of my work spread across the industry. BiteFix wasn't just a repair shop anymore. It was becoming a low-code, high-efficiency dev firm that specialized in customized software for underserved businesses. We didn't chase billion-dollar clients. We chased the ones that Silicon Valley ignored, and we made them stronger. The irony kept compounding. 6 months after the Millimart migration, I got a call from a recruiter. A mid-sized tech equity fund was scouting emerging startups in the logistics and retail tech space. They had heard about us. I didn't even know how they got our name. They flew me to a conference in Seattle. I stood on stage in a borrowed blazer and told our story, how we built custom POS solutions for real businesses, in real towns, with real pain points. People clapped. Not politely, enthusiastically. I had never felt that before. That night, we closed our first angel investment round. By the second year, BiteFix had grown into a team of 24. We moved into an office above the cafe where I'd installed my first router. I framed that first $87 invoice and hung it by the entrance. Everyone laughed when they saw it. But it wasn't a joke anymore. It was history. And then, like all poetic things in life, it came full circle. A friend texted me a screenshot from LinkedIn. My uncle's company had been acquired by a regional competitor. The stock price had plummeted. Layoffs were in progress. My cousin Jake's profile no longer listed the company. I refreshed the business news page 3 times. Then I opened an email I had received just 2 days earlier, from an M&A firm requesting a meeting about a potential asset acquisition, involving a legacy software company struggling with retention and debt. I hadn't recognized the name at the time. But now I did. They were trying to sell. And I had just raised enough capital to buy. I didn't say yes right away. The acquisition offer sat in my inbox like a live wire. A part of me wanted to delete it and move on, bury the past for good. But another part of me, the version of me who had scrubbed server rooms while my cousin played boss, who had eaten dollar ramen in a back room while my family popped champagne at corporate dinners, that version was wide awake. He wanted to see how far this could go. I called the M&A firm and asked for details. They were polite, polished, and eager to meet. We're representing a legacy software company, they said, with strong regional infrastructure and a loyal but declining client base. Management is open to full or partial acquisition, particularly with digital transformation capacity. Translation: they were desperate. Their software was outdated, their leadership was stagnant, and they needed someone younger, faster, and hungrier. I didn't need to ask who the company was. I already knew. It was them. The same company my father had wanted me to work for. The same one that scoffed at my little repair shop. The same one where I wasn't good enough. I played it cool. We scheduled a meeting at their office, my old stomping ground. I hadn't been back there in over 3 years. As I walked into the glass lobby, polished and sterile, I felt the weight of ghosts pressing in. I remembered hauling boxes up those stairs, fixing wiring on weekends, being called kid by people who barely remembered my name. And now, here I was, in a tailored jacket, flanked by 2 advisors and a valuation specialist. My uncle looked like he'd aged a decade. The fake smile on his face barely held. He didn't greet me with warmth, just a polite nod. My cousin Jake was there, too, wearing a neutral expression he couldn't quite maintain. I could see it in his eyes, disbelief, then calculation. They knew who I was. They just hadn't expected me to be this. We sat down in the boardroom, same long table, same lifeless art on the walls. I took the seat at the head. As you're aware, their financial advisor began, the company has faced several challenges this past fiscal year. With market disruption and client churn. I cut him off, gently. I'm aware. I've spoken with several of your former clients. That landed like a brick. My uncle stiffened. Jake cleared his throat. I'm not here to insult your legacy. I continued. You built something that mattered for a while. But technology moved on. Your clients moved on. And you failed to move with them. Silence. I'm offering a full acquisition. My offer reflects current debt, liabilities, and the fact that your last 3 quarters have been negative. I slid the papers across the table. It's generous, given the state of things. Jake's voice broke the silence. This is a joke. You want to buy us? With what, Your little side hustle. I didn't blink. BiteFix just closed a Series A with $18 million in funding. We've deployed solutions in over 100 retail chains. And last quarter, we posted profits you haven't seen in 5 years. My uncle's face turned red. You think you can just walk in here and take what we built? I leaned back. Calm. No. I think you already lost it. I'm just offering to clean up the mess. They asked for time. Of course they did. But they didn't have much. Their biggest clients were gone, their dev team had shrunk to a skeleton crew, and their software couldn't compete with platforms a quarter of their size. The next week was a blur of emails, negotiations, and posturing. They tried to pretend they had other offers. I knew they didn't. I let them sweat. Then I made my move. I offered slightly less than my initial proposal, but with better terms for the employees. I promised severance, transition assistance, and potential rehires for the few talented engineers left. I excluded upper management. That part was non-negotiable. Jake called me one night. I hadn't spoken to him in years. Look, he said, I know we weren't close. But this company is my life. My dad's life. Don't take it just to prove a point. I paused. This isn't about a point. It's about a future. Yours ended 3 quarters ago. Mine's just getting started. The call ended with a hollow. Good luck. We both knew what it meant. 3 days later, the documents were signed. BiteFix officially acquired the company that had once defined my family. I walked into the office the next morning, not as an intern, not as a joke, but as the owner. I called an all-hands meeting. The room was half full. So many desks were empty now. The faces that remained looked nervous, uncertain. I took the mic. I know what you're all thinking. I began. You're wondering what comes next. Let me be clear, I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to rebuild. I laid out the roadmap, streamlined systems, tech upgrades, client re-engagement. I offered roles to those who were willing to adapt. And I told them the truth. This company used to be about pride. About legacy. But that legacy got stale. We're going to change that. Together. After the meeting, I walked through the halls, alone. The same halls where I used to be invisible. Now, every door was open to me. I stopped by the break room, saw the same coffee maker that once had a "Not for interns" sign taped to it. I laughed. Then I tossed the sign in the trash. Later that week, I held a private meeting with my uncle and Jake. I had no obligation to. But I wanted them to hear it from me. You could have listened, I said. You could have mentored me. Believed in me. Instead, you mocked me. My uncle looked tired. We thought we were doing what was best for you. No, I said. You did what was best for the company. For yourselves. And now, I'm doing what's best for me. Jake didn't say a word. Just stared at the floor. I extended a final offer, consulting roles if they wanted them. No power. No title. Just the chance to contribute. They declined. That night, I sat in the CO office. My office now. I looked at the skyline through the glass wall. The city buzzed beneath me. Somewhere out there, someone was opening a tiny shop, being laughed at for dreaming too big. I raised a glass of water and whispered to the empty room. Keep going. Weeks passed. We rebranded the company under the BiteFix umbrella. Clients started returning. We launched 2 new products, both lean, modern, and client-first. The industry took notice. And then, my father called. It was the first time in years. He didn't apologize. Not directly. But he said he was impressed, and asked if I'd come by for dinner. I hesitated. The child in me wanted to rush there. The man in me wasn't so sure. I went. Same house. Same smell. Same table. But something was different. They didn't speak with the same authority anymore. My father looked older. Softer. My mother watched me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. We're proud of you, she said. I know, I replied. I smiled. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. On the way out, my father touched my shoulder. You proved us wrong, he said. I looked at him, steady. I wasn't trying to. I was just trying to build something of my own. Then I walked to my car. Drove away. No drama. No tears. Just silence and a quiet sense of peace. They had laughed at my business. Now I owned theirs. And more than that, I owned my future. It's strange how quiet victory can be. After the acquisition, after the boardroom standoffs and ink signatures and farewells laced with forced politeness, things just settled. There was no ticker-tape parade, no dramatic music. Just emails, restructuring, progress reports. I had thought success would feel like a firework. Instead, it was more like a sunrise, slow, steady, illuminating. BiteFix didn't just absorb the old company. We transformed it. My team worked tirelessly to modernize the back-end systems. We retired bloated codebases and rebuilt the core platform from the ground up, using modular, scalable tools. The new product suite rolled out within 5 months, sleek and cloud-integrated. Clients who had left years ago started knocking again. I rehired a few developers who had been pushed out years earlier, people like Calvin, the back-end wizard who'd once mentored me quietly when I was an intern, slipping me docs and tips when no one else cared. I gave him a lead engineering role. He deserved it more than anyone. As for the rest of the leadership team, I didn't look back. My uncle had declined my offer to consult. Jake had ghosted completely. Their offices were emptied within a week. Their names taken off the doors, their portraits removed from the website. Not out of spite, just necessity. What we were building wasn't about them anymore. It was about what came next. A year after the acquisition, I stood on a stage in San Francisco at a mid-market tech summit. We had been invited to speak as a case study in rapid transformation. I told our story. About the repair shop that turned into a software firm. About the legacy company that resisted change, and what happened when it didn't evolve. The audience clapped. Investors nodded. But my favorite moment came backstage, when a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. My dad told me to stop playing entrepreneur, she said. Told me no one would ever take me seriously. But your story. She didn't have to finish. I just smiled and said, build it anyway. That sentence stayed with me. Back home, our new HQ buzzed with energy. We'd outgrown the office above the cafe and now occupied 2 floors of a downtown tower. The walls were glass, the air filled with ideas. We held open demo days where junior devs could pitch product add-ons. One of those turned into our fastest-growing module. I made sure the girl who designed it got full credit and a raise. Still, in the quiet moments, I thought about my family. My mother emailed me on my birthday. She used to send long, anxious messages. Now it was short. Just, happy birthday. We hope you're well. I replied with a thank you. No more, no less. One Sunday, I drove past their house again. I hadn't been back since that dinner. The yard looked the same. So did the porch swing where I used to sit as a kid, reading comic books while my father shouted about serious careers. I didn't stop. A week later, I got a handwritten letter. From my father. His words were careful, almost formal. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but he had finally understood something, that belief isn't about control. It's about trust. He said he had failed to trust me, and in doing so, had lost more than just a son. He had lost the chance to be proud with me, not just after me. He ended it with a sentence that hit harder than I expected. You made something from nothing. That's more than I ever did. I stared at that letter for a long time. Then I put it in the bottom drawer of my desk, not to forget it, but to remind myself that silence isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just space waiting to be filled with better words. Business continued to grow. We partnered with educational programs to teach software engineering to high school students. We built a startup incubator that offered tech tools to minority-owned businesses. The repair shop? I kept it open. It was still there on Maple and 3rd, now freshly painted, run by a former apprentice. The BiteFix logo remained, but it wasn't a monument. It was a living part of the story. I visited it one night, just before closing. The lights were soft, the smell of solder in the air. The kid behind the counter looked up, wide-eyed. "You're..." he started. I smiled. "Just visiting. Carry on." Outside, I looked up at the sign. BiteFix. A name that once felt like a punchline. Now, it was something else entirely. They had laughed at my business, mocked my vision, dismissed my grit. But I didn't build a company to prove them wrong. I built it because I believed I could. And in the end, I didn't just win back my pride or reclaim a stolen future. I built something better than revenge. I built a life I didn't need their approval to be proud of. Sometimes, the loudest voice in the room isn't the one yelling, it's the one that dares to believe in silence. When I look back on everything, the dinner table insults, the sleepless nights, the tiny repair shop that smelled like dust and desperation, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel clarity. Because the greatest lesson I learned from this journey isn't about business, or money, or revenge. It's about resilience. It's about learning that belief in yourself is often born in the moments when no one else is clapping. People will tell you to be practical, to take the safe job, to follow the path they've already paved. They'll dress it up in concern, in love, in tradition. But underneath it all is fear. Fear of what it means if you succeed without them. Fear that your different path might expose the limits of theirs. If I had listened to the voices that told me I wasn't good enough, I wouldn't have started. If I had waited for their approval, I'd still be sitting at that dinner table, explaining myself to people who never wanted to understand. At some point, you have to stop asking for permission to be who you are. Starting my business wasn't just about escaping a legacy, it was about creating a new one. Not just for myself, but for everyone who's ever been underestimated. Everyone who's ever been told they're too quiet, too idealistic, too ambitious. Or just not enough. There's this moment that no one talks about when you chase a dream. It's not the launch. Not the big win. It's the moment where you're staring at your bank account, wondering how you'll pay rent. When your friends stop inviting you out because they think you're doing your own thing. When your own family looks at you with that mix of pity and confusion and says, "Why can't you just be normal?" That moment is terrifying. But it's also sacred. Because if you can survive that, if you can push through the doubt, the debt, the isolation, then what you build will be yours. Not borrowed. Not handed down. Not conditional. Yours. And that's a kind of freedom that's worth everything. It's easy to mistake success for validation. But validation is cheap. It's applause from people who weren't clapping when you were crawling. Success, real success, is when you no longer need the applause. When you've built something strong enough that it doesn't matter who's watching. Don't get me wrong, revenge is tempting. It's satisfying in the short term. There were days I fantasized about shoving my success in their faces. About writing long emails titled, "Remember me?" But the truth is, the best revenge isn't retribution, it's reinvention. I didn't need to crush them. I just needed to outgrow the version of myself that needed their approval. That's the version they laughed at. That's the one they thought would crawl back. But I left him behind the day I picked up a screwdriver and opened my first customer's laptop. Your story doesn't need to be dramatic to be meaningful. It just needs to be yours. And if you're reading this, if you've ever been laughed at, shut down, or dismissed, know this: their doubt is not your destiny. Their ceiling is not your limit. And their timeline is not your deadline. Take the risk. Start the shop. Write the code. Make the call. Even if it's small. Even if it's slow. Even if no one believes in it but you. Especially then. Because one day, you'll look back not at the moment they laughed, but at the moment you kept going anyway. And that will be the moment that changed everything.